My name is Ethan Carter, and for 23 years, my two older brothers treated me like I was invisible. When our father passed away, they stood beside me in black suits, shook hands with grieving friends, and spoke about family, loyalty, and carrying on his legacy. 3 hours later, they stole everything he had built: the company, the house, the family business, even my father's office. Then they smiled as they handed me a check for exactly $1. "That's your share," my oldest brother, Ryan, said with a grin. "Dad always knew you weren't business material." Everyone in the room laughed. Everyone except our father's attorney. He looked at me for only a second before lowering his eyes, almost as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. At the time, I thought it was pity. I had no idea it was the beginning of something much bigger. Growing up, our family owned Carter Industrial Supply, one of the largest construction equipment distributors in Indiana. People knew the Carter name. Contractors trusted it. Banks respected it. Employees stayed for decades because my father believed loyalty was worth more than quick profits. Ryan, my oldest brother, loved the spotlight. He could charm investors, shake every hand in the room, and convince anyone he was the smartest businessman alive. Then there was Mason. He handled finances. Numbers came naturally to him, but so did manipulation. He always knew how to make money disappear on paper and reappear somewhere else. And then there was me, the quiet son. While my brothers attended networking, dinners, I spent my weekends repairing warehouse equipment alongside the mechanics. I learned every forklift, every loading dock, every maintenance schedule. I knew every employee by name, not because I planned to inherit the company, because I genuinely cared. Dad noticed. He never said much, but every Friday afternoon, he'd invite me into his office. No speeches, no lectures, just coffee. Sometimes we'd sit there for an hour without saying much. Looking back, I think those quiet conversations taught me more than any business school ever could. My mother passed away when I was 14. After that, our family slowly stopped feeling like a family. Dinner became business meetings. Birthdays became networking opportunities. Every achievement turned into a competition. Ryan had to earn more. Mason had to own more. I simply wanted peace. That made me look weak. Or at least that's what my brothers believed. Whenever Dad praised me for solving a warehouse problem, Ryan rolled his eyes. "When are you going to stop pretending you're one of the workers?" Mason laughed. Maybe because that's all he'll ever be. Dad never answered them. He simply changed the subject. At the time, I wished he'd defended me. Years later, I realized he was watching all of us. 6 months before Dad died, something strange happened. He called me into his office. After everyone else had left, his voice sounded tired, older. He placed a small brass key on the desk. "If anything happens to me," he said quietly, "promise me you won't make decisions out of anger." I laughed nervously. "Dad, you're not going anywhere," he smiled. "I hope you're right." Then he slid the key toward me. "It's for storage unit 218. I stared at it. "What's inside?" "When the time is right." He paused. "You'll know." That was all he said. No explanation, no dramatic speech, just the key. I slipped it into my wallet and honestly forgot about it. Life got busy. His health declined. Hospital visits replaced Friday coffees. And then one cold November morning, he was gone. The funeral brought hundreds of people. Employees cried harder than some relatives. Retired truck drivers traveled across 3 states just to say goodbye. One mechanic placed his old work gloves on Dad's casket. "I owe everything to this man," he whispered. Watching that, I realized something. My father hadn't built a company. He'd built lives. Unfortunately, my brothers saw only dollar signs. The reading of the will happened 2 days later. Ryan entered the conference room wearing an expensive designer suit. Mason carried 3 folders filled with financial reports. Neither looked sad anymore. They looked excited. The attorney cleared his throat. Your father updated his estate plan 3 years ago. Ryan smiled immediately. I figured. The attorney continued reading. Ryan inherited 49% of Carter Industrial Supply. Mason inherited 49%. Their personal homes, luxury vehicles, investment accounts. Everything was listed in perfect detail. Then the attorney looked at me. Ethan Carter. He hesitated. You've been left $1. Silence filled the room. Ryan burst into laughter first. Mason wasn't far behind. I told you, Ryan said. Dad finally admitted you were useless. He slid the $1 check across the polished table. Try not to spend it all at once. The room echoed with their laughter. I picked up the check, folded it carefully, placed it inside my wallet, not because it mattered, but because it reminded me exactly who they were. Over the next few weeks, they moved quickly. My office disappeared. My employee badge stopped working. Security escorted me out of the building I'd worked in since I was 16. Some employees avoided eye contact. Others secretly apologized. One warehouse supervisor hugged me before I left. This doesn't feel right. I smiled. It'll be okay. Truthfully, I wasn't sure it would. 3 months later, I found myself repairing equipment for a small manufacturing company, nearly 60 miles away. The pay wasn't great, but the owner treated people with respect. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. Until one rainy Saturday afternoon, while cleaning out my old wallet, something fell onto the kitchen table, a small brass key. Storage unit 218. I stared at it. Then I remembered. Dad. His office. His final words. When the time is right. My heart started racing. The next morning, I drove across town to an old self-storage facility near the railroad tracks. The manager checked my ID, then smiled. I've been wondering when someone would finally come. He handed me a clipboard. Your father prepaid this unit for 10 years. 10 years. That didn't make sense. I walked through rows of silent metal doors until I found Unit 218. The brass key fit perfectly. The lock clicked open. Inside, there wasn't furniture. There weren't family keepsakes. There were rows of neatly labeled banker boxes, blueprint tubes, leather-bound journals, hard drives, a locked steel filing cabinet, and sitting alone on an old wooden desk, a single white envelope. Across the front, written in my father's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 words that instantly changed everything. For Ethan, when they think they've won. For nearly 5 minutes, I couldn't move. The storage unit was silent, except for the distant hum of traffic outside. My father's handwriting stared back at me from the white envelope. For Ethan, when they think they've won. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single handwritten letter. Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, it means 2 things. First, I'm gone. Second, your brothers did exactly what I feared they would. Don't hate them. Greed punishes itself eventually. Instead, understand what they never bothered to learn. Ownership isn't always written on the biggest document. Sometimes the smallest paper controls everything. Everything you need is inside this storage unit. Do not act quickly. Study first. Truth is stronger than anger. Love, Dad. I read the letter 3 times. There was no dramatic confession, no secret bank account, no hidden fortune. Just one sentence that refused to leave my mind. ownership isn't always written on the biggest document. I looked around the storage unit again. Every box had a label. Property records, original contracts board, minutes land, surveys tax, documents corporate leases. It wasn't a collection of memories. It was an archive. A complete history of the Carter family business. For the next 3 weekends, I practically lived inside that storage unit. I brought coffee, a notebook, my laptop, and patience. Box after box revealed documents dating back almost 40 years. Every purchase, every expansion, every loan agreement, my father had saved everything. Then I found a thick blue binder labeled Foundation. Property do not discard. Inside were the original deeds for the land where Carter Industrial Supply had been built. The date shocked me. Long before the company became successful. Long before Ryan or Mason had ever worked there. Attached to the deed was another document, a lease agreement. I frowned. That didn't make sense. Why would our own company lease land from itself? I kept reading. Then, my heart skipped. The company didn't own the land. A separate family trust did. I'd never heard of it. The Evelyn Carter Property Trust, named after my grandmother. The trust owned the 20-acre industrial property beneath the company's headquarters, the warehouse, the offices, the parking lots, everything. The operating company simply leased the land, every month, every year, for decades. I checked the signature page. Trustee, Harold Carter, my father, successor, trustee, blank. No name. I searched every folder. Nothing, until I opened a sealed envelope attached to the back. Inside was an amendment, filed only 7 months before Dad passed away. I stopped breathing. Successor trustee, Ethan James Carter. Me, I read it again, then again. Surely I was misunderstanding something. I called the attorney whose name appeared on the paperwork. Margaret Collins, retired now. She answered on the 3rd ring. This is Margaret. My name is Ethan Carter. Silence. Then she sighed. I've been expecting this call. You knew. Your father instructed me not to contact you unless you contacted me first. I drove to her office that afternoon. She spent nearly 4 hours explaining everything. My father separated ownership decades earlier. The business operated one company. The land belonged to another. Most people assumed they were the same. Legally, they weren't. When Ryan and Mason inherited the company, they inherited the business, but not the property underneath it. That belonged to the trust. And now, I controlled the trust. I stared at Margaret in disbelief. So, what does that actually mean? She folded her hands. It means your brothers own a company. She paused. You own where that company stands. I leaned back slowly. They have a lease. She nodded. A renewable commercial lease. When does it expire? She smiled slightly. In 91 days. For the first time since Dad died, I smiled. Not because I wanted revenge, because I finally understood what he'd been trying to teach me. He never wanted me to fight. He wanted me to think. Margaret handed me another folder. Your father left one more instruction. Inside was another handwritten note. Don't throw them out. Give them a choice. The way they answer will tell you whether they're still my sons. I folded the note carefully. Dad still believed people could change. I wasn't sure I shared his optimism. Meanwhile, Ryan and Mason had transformed Carter Industrial Supply into something Dad would barely recognize. Old employees were fired. Pension plans disappeared. Health benefits were reduced. Experienced managers were replaced by younger executives willing to say yes to everything. Profits climbed quickly. Employee morale collapsed even faster. Former co-workers called me occasionally, They're cutting every corner. They're selling cheaper equipment. They don't care about quality anymore. Every conversation ended the same way. We miss your father. So did I. One evening, I parked across the street from company headquarters. The same building I'd walked into almost every day since I was 16. Employees now rushed out with tired faces. Nobody lingered. Nobody laughed in the parking lot anymore. The place felt different, colder. Ryan exited first. Designer suit. Luxury SUV. Bluetooth headset. Never looking up. Mason followed 10 minutes later, talking loudly about quarterly profits. Neither noticed the maintenance worker struggling with a broken loading dock behind them. Dad would have stopped. They didn't. The lease expired in exactly 62 days. Margaret asked me what I planned to do. I answered honestly, I don't know. She smiled. That's the first smart thing you've said. Over the next month, I studied every page of the lease, every clause, every renewal condition, every obligation. Then I found something interesting. The renewal required both parties to negotiate in good faith, meaning I couldn't simply evict them overnight, but I could refuse the old terms and propose new ones. Perfectly legal, perfectly fair. Exactly as my father intended, the day before the lease expired. I mailed 2 identical envelopes, one to Ryan, one to Mason. Neither contained threats. Neither mentioned revenge, just a formal notice requesting a lease renewal meeting. Date, time, location. Attorney present. Professional. Simple. Ryan called within 20 minutes. Ethan, yes. You think this is funny? No. You actually believe you own our headquarters. I don't believe it. I have the documents. He laughed. A warehouse mechanic suddenly became a real estate expert. You should probably bring your lawyer tomorrow. The line went silent, then he hung up. The next morning, both brothers walked into Margaret Collins' conference room, wearing confident smiles. Those smiles lasted less than 10 minutes. Margaret calmly placed the original deeds on the table, then the trust documents, then the lease, then the trustee amendment bearing Dad's signature. Ryan's face drained of color. Mason flipped through page after page. This can't be right. Margaret adjusted her glasses. It has been legally recorded for 7 months. Ryan looked directly at me. What do you want? I remembered Dad's note. Give them a choice. So I did. I'll renew the lease. Relief immediately crossed both their faces. Then I continued. But there are new conditions. Ryan leaned forward. What conditions? I slid a printed document across the table. The first page wasn't about money. It wasn't about rent. It wasn't about ownership. It contained 3 simple demands, and as Ryan read the first line, his smile disappeared completely. Ryan stared at the first page. Mason leaned over his shoulder. Neither of them spoke for nearly 30 seconds. Finally, Ryan looked up. You've got to be kidding. I'm not, I replied. He slapped the document onto the table. You don't care about the money. No. You don't want half the company. No. Then what is this? I looked him straight in the eyes. It's exactly what Dad would have wanted. The 3 conditions were simple. First, every employee who had been fired without cause during the previous 6 months would be offered their jobs back with full back pay. Second, employee health insurance and retirement benefits would be restored immediately. Third, a percentage of the company's annual profits would be placed into a scholarship fund for the children of long-term employees, named after our father. No hidden fees, no personal payout, no demand for ownership, no revenge. Ryan laughed bitterly. You own the land beneath a company worth hundreds of millions, and this is what you ask for? Yes. Mason folded his arms. You're a fool. Maybe. But those are the conditions. Ryan pushed the papers back across the table. We're not agreeing to that. I nodded. That's your decision. He stood. We'll see you in court. I simply replied, I'll be there. Within 2 weeks, the lawsuit made local headlines. Carter family feud threatens major Indiana employer. Reporters camped outside company headquarters. Employees whispered in the hallways. Social media exploded with rumors. Ryan appeared on local business news. This is nothing more than an attempt by my younger brother to interfere with a successful company. He smiled for the cameras. Our father wanted us to move forward. I turned off the television. He still believed appearances could replace the truth. Margaret warned me, they'll try to make you look greedy. I know. They'll say you're holding the company hostage. I know. So don't fight them in public. That advice sounded exactly like my father's. So I stayed silent. No interviews. No social media posts. No angry statements. Just documents, facts, patience. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Former employees began contacting me, not because they wanted money, because they wanted to testify. One by one, they told their stories. A warehouse manager, who'd worked there for 28 years, had been fired by email. A receptionist who survived cancer lost her health insurance 2 weeks before another surgery. A delivery driver was dismissed after asking for safer equipment. Each story hurt, not because it surprised me, because Dad would have known every one of their names. Then came the biggest surprise. One rainy Tuesday morning, my phone rang. The caller ID read, Alan Brooks, Dad's oldest friend, former chief financial officer. He had retired 5 years earlier. I've been watching the news, he said. I figured. I think your father expected this. What do you mean? I have something. Alan invited me to his home. He walked slowly now, older than I remembered. Inside his study, he unlocked an old safe. From it, he removed a leather notebook. I promised your father I'd only give this to you if the family ever stopped acting like a family. I opened it carefully. Every page was filled with handwritten notes, Dad's handwriting, business lessons, leadership ideas, mistakes he'd made, and names. Hundreds of employee names. Beside each name, a memory. Tom, stayed late during the blizzard of '98. Maria, paid for another employee's groceries without telling anyone. George, never missed a shift in 23 years. Dad remembered everyone. Alan smiled. He never measured success by profit. He measured people. At the back of the notebook was one final page. It simply read, if Ethan is reading this, tell him I never chose him because he was the smartest. I chose him because he never forgot the people who carried the business. I closed the notebook. For the first time since Dad died, I cried. The court hearing arrived 6 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Employees, reporters, business leaders, even competitors. Ryan entered wearing another expensive suit. Mason carried stacks of financial reports. Their legal team filled an entire table. Margaret brought only 2 binders. She smiled. Truth doesn't need 6 attorneys. Ryan testified first. He described himself as the company's rightful leader. He called me emotional, inexperienced, dangerous. Our younger brother doesn't understand business. The judge listened quietly. Then Margaret stood. No questions. Ryan smiled confidently. He thought he'd won. Then Margaret called the first witness, a warehouse employee, then another, 23 witnesses, over 2 days. None of them talked about ownership. None discussed money. They spoke about character. Who stayed after storms? Who knew employees' birthdays? Who carried injured workers to their cars? who answered phone calls at midnight. Every answer pointed toward one person. Not Ryan, not Mason, my father. And slowly, the courtroom began comparing his sons. On the third day, Margaret presented the lease, the deeds, the trust. Everything was legal. Everything had been properly recorded. Ryan's attorney argued aggressively. Ethan Carter is abusing his position. Margaret calmly replied, "My client has requested no personal compensation." She handed copies of my proposed lease terms to the judge. The courtroom became silent. The judge looked at Ryan. "Mr. Carter, these conditions benefit your employees. Why exactly did you reject them?" Ryan hesitated, then answered honestly, "They reduce our profits." The judge raised an eyebrow. "By approximately." Mason quietly answered, 3%. The courtroom murmured, 3%. That was all. 3% stood between them. And doing the right thing, the judge requested a recess. As everyone left the courtroom, Ryan stopped me in the hallway. His voice was lower than I'd ever heard it. "You planned all of this." I shook my head. "No, Dad did." Ryan looked away. For the first time in his life, he had no comeback. When court resumed, the judge wasn't ready to issue a final ruling. Instead, she gave both sides one last opportunity to negotiate privately. "If this family can reach a fair agreement," she said, "I strongly encourage it." Margaret looked at me. I nodded. One last chance. Exactly what Dad would have wanted. We entered the conference room. Ryan closed the door. Mason sat silently. For nearly a full minute, nobody spoke. Then Ryan finally broke the silence. His next words shocked everyone in the room. "I think," he swallowed hard, "Dad knew this day would come.